Hi soulmates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. In this channel I share sewing and pattern drafting tutorials, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut and sew this Ankara dress. If it's what you love to learn, kindly watch to the end. I'll be making use of these 4 yards of Ankara fabric that I've had for a while now. My lining, I have just 1.5 yards here, and this left over 1 yard of satin fabric. Starting off with the pattern drafting, from the tip of my pattern paper, I'll mark 1 inch downwards and square across, and I'll level that line, my shoulder line. I also went ahead to demarcate my pattern paper and level this side, the center front, and this side, the center back. On the front side, I will mark 10 inches downwards from my shoulder line for the bust line and 16 inches from my half length. I'll square across and label the lines. Placing my tape on the half length, I will mark 9 inches downwards to my hip line and 25 inches from my knee line. I'll be marking the full length of this dress on my fabric when cutting because the length of my pattern paper was not long enough. So when cutting on my fabric, I'll input the full length of this dress and the hemming allowance. On the shoulder line, I will mark half of my shoulder measurements, which is 8 inches. I'll also mark 3 inches for my neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth, and connect with a curved line. I will mark 1 inch downwards for my shoulder slope and connect it to the neck width like so. From my shoulder slope, I will mark 7.5 inches downwards for my armhole level and connect with a straight line. At the point where the armhole level ended, I will extend the line outwards and label that my chest line. On the midpoint of the straight line, I'll come in by ½ inch, and on the chest line, I will mark what of my bust circumference. They use my curved ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to the ½ inch I came in by quarter of my bust circumference on the chest line to form my armhole curve. Now for my darts, I will mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 3.5 on the bust line, half length, and on the hip line, and connect with a straight line. On the dart line, I will mark 6 inches downwards from the half length, and on the half length, I will mark ½ inch on both sides of the dart line and connect it upwards to my bust line and downwards to the 6 inches I marked like so. I will mark my under bust, which is 3.5 inches downwards from my bust line, which is also my nipple, half of my nipple to nipple measurement. Okay, so if you want to get your client's under bust without taking the measurement, or if you forgot to measure it, you can as well just mark half of her nipple to nipple measurement. So I've marked mine on my dart line. I will mark 1.5 inches from the dart leg towards the side front and ½ inch from the dart leg towards the center front. That under bust mark that I made. Afterwards, I'll connect these marks upwards to my bust line like so. After connecting, I will mark the same measurements on the half length and connect it straight down. I'll mark the midpoint of my shoulder and I'll connect from that midpoint to my bust point with a slight curve like this. What I'll do now is to mark what of my round body measurement. On the bust line, I'll mark what of my bust circumference. I'll be adding the sewing allowance on the fabric while cutting. On the half length, I'll mark what of my waist circumference. I will replace the total dart intake I took. I will also mark my side bust dart. So from the bust line, I will mark 2 inches downwards and connect it to the bust point like this. Then on the hip line, I will do a hip allocation. So I will divide my hip circumference by 2, and whatever I get after dividing my hip circumference by 2, I will minus 1.5 inches from it and divide it also by 2. Divide the answer by 2. Okay, so it's basically minusing 1.5 inches from half of my hip circumference and dividing it by 2 again. Okay, that's what I'm going to mark on my front hip line. Then on the knee line, I'm going to minus 4 inches because I really want my knee to have that pencil effect, but not too tight. So I'm going to minus 4 inches from my hip circumference and divide that by 4. Okay, so I'll mark whatever it gave me there. What I'll do now is to cut out the half length because this dress is going to have a half length joining. After cutting out the upper part, I am going to do 100% degrees contour because this is going to be a tube, or the upper part is going to be tube. Okay, so I've gone ahead to slash open the line that ran from the shoulder to the bust point to be able to close the side bust dart. After closing the side bust dart, I will hold it down with my masking tape. I will take the measurement between the opening of the shoulder and mark it on the shoulder line that is towards the armhole. I will replace the shoulder with the same measurement. Then use my curved ruler to connect from the first mark to my bust point, and then from the second mark, that is the replacement of the shoulder, to the armhole curve like this. So because I'm making a tube up, I will mark 1 inch upwards from the chest line. To draw my style line, I will open the side bust dart and close the 100% degrees contour. At the center front, I will mark 2 inches upwards from my bust line. Okay, so if you want yours to be more deeper, you can mark 1 inch or 1.5. So it depends on what you want. You can also mark exactly on the bust line. Then I'm going to connect it to that 1 inch I came upwards by, like so. I will close my side bust dart, then go ahead and cut this out. Watch carefully to see how I did my cutting. Now for the front skirt part, I will mark half of my waist circumference on the half length. I will not replace the one in that because I will not be taking that on the front skirt. So I've already marked the other measurements. I'll go ahead and connect with my ruler. Now for the plain fabric combination that has basque line on the skirt, I'm going to mark 3.5 inches on the side front of my skirt, and on the center front I'm going to mark 6.5 inches downwards and connect with my ruler. Then go ahead and cut this out. Now for the back pattern, I've already marked my shoulder line. From the center back, I'm going to mark 1 inch inwards for my zip allowance. For the shoulder line, I'm going to mark 10 inches downwards for my bust line and 14 inches for my half length. Okay, so the front half length and the back half length are not the same. There are 2 inches difference. The 2 inches we mark for our side bust dart. We're going to minus that from the front half length to get our back half length. Okay, so I'm going to mark 14 inches for my half back length. I'll square across and I'll label the lines. I will mark 8 inches from the center back, which is half of my shoulder measurement, and I'll mark 3 inches for my neck width. I also mark 1 inch for my shoulder slope and connect it to the neck depth like so. Then from the shoulder slope, I will mark 7.5 inches downwards and connect with a straight line. At the point where the straight line ended, I am going to extend the line outwards and label that my chest line. I'll mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 3.5 inches on the bust line and on the half length, and connect with a straight line. Placing my tip on the half length, I will extend the dart line upwards. I'll mark 6 inches upwards and extend the dart line to that 6 inches. On the half length, I will mark half inch on both sides of the dart line and connect it upwards to that 6 inches extension. I'll mark the midpoint of my shoulder and connect that midpoint to that 6 inches extension like this. Afterwards, I'll go ahead now and mark what's of my round body measurement on the chest line, bust line and half length. And on the half length, I'm going to replace the 1 inch dart and connect the marks. Just like what we did for the front, on the chest line, I'll come upwards by 1 inch and reconnect the measurement line. I'll also come upwards by 1 inch from the bust line at the center back, then connect it to the 1 inch I came upwards by on the chest line like so. To avoid any form of zipper bulge, on the 1 inch zipper allowance, I will come in by half inch on the half length and reconnect it to the style line at the back like so. Then I'll replace that half inch on the side back, because you're replacing this because you're working with Ankara. You know, Ankara does not stretch. Ankara fabric does not stretch. So if you minus this half inch without replacing, you have reduced your waist measurement, and after sewing it might be tight. But if you're working with a stretchy fabric, there'll be no need replacing the half inch. Okay, so afterwards I'll go ahead and cut this out. To cut the back skirt pattern, what I will simply do is to place my front skirt pattern on the pattern for the back skirt. I will hold the two patterns together with my masking tape. and on the side back I'm going to mark 1 inch on the waistline for my back skirt dart. I will indicate the dart line on the back and reconnect from the hip line to the waistline like so. For the back hip allocation, I'll divide my hip circumference by 2 and add the 1.5 inches we removed from the front hip to half of the hip circumference, then divide it again by 2. So that is what we're going to mark on this back hip. So you can see the effect now. So afterwards, I'll go ahead and connect that to my waistline and downwards to the knee line like so. After connecting, I'll add my 1 inch zip allowance for my back skirt. Then go ahead and cut it out. What I'm going to do now is to cut each of these pattern pieces on my fabric. So I'm gonna head to place one of my skirt pattern on my folded fabric, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is to mark the full length I'm working with. Okay, so I'm marking 14 inches. So that is my full length from the waist. Okay, so I'm going to mark that. I'm also going to mark 2 inches sewing allowance by the side, and on the upper part I am going to add 1/2 inch for joining. Okay, this is the front skirt, so I'll add 1/2 inch for joining of the plain fabric. So afterwards I'll go ahead and cut it out. I'll also cut my other pattern pieces on my fabric.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a breeze, love moving through.
So guys, I was done cutting all my fabrics and their lining, and I've also gone ahead to gum my wording to the upper front part, as you can see. So I'm using the Ankara fabric as the lining for the upper part because I have just 1.5 yards of lining and it's going to serve only the lining for the skirt. I'm going to join my fabric pieces together. So this is me pinning the side fronts and the center fronts together, front facing fronts. I'll go over to my machine and join the two using 1/2 inch, and this is the lining. I'm going to do the same for the lining. I'll also do the same for the back upper part. This is the front skirt. I'm going to join the plain fabric to it, front facing front, using 1/2 inch. This is the back skirt. I'm going to place the lining and the main fabric front facing front, and I will join it at the full length using 1/2 inch. I'll also mark and sew my dart. So I'll place my pattern on my skirt, and then I'll mark where the dart line is. And after joining the plain fabric to the front skirt, I'll also join the lining and the front skirt main fabric at the full length using 1/2 inch. I was done joining the center front and the side front of the upper part together, and this is what it looks like. What I'm going to do now is to turn the neckline with its lining using 1/2 inch. I'll also join the sides of the lining and the main fabric together. The only part that will be left open is the half length, that is the bottom part. This is where I'm going to be turning it from. I'll do the same for the upper back piece. I was done joining the lining and the main fabric of the skirt part at the full length. What I will do now is to place it front facing front and join the sides of the main fabric and the lining together using 1/2 inch. I'll do the same for the front skirt. The only side that will be left open is the upper part. This is where I'll be turning it from. I was done joining the lining to the main fabric, and I've also turned it to the right side. What I'm going to do now is to join the sides of the front and back piece together. So I added 2 inches allowance while I was cutting, and I turned with 1/2 inch. I'll be left with 1.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inches and join the two sides of the front and the back upper parts together. Now for the pleated sleeves, it's going to be a straight piece of fabric. It's going to be in a rectangle shape, and it will start from the front half length to the back half length. I've gone ahead to fold the 1 yard of fabric I have into two, so I'm going to be cutting the two sleeves at the same time. I'm going to mark the length. Okay, so there are 2 ways you can actually get the length of this sleeve. It's either you measure your front half length to your back half length, or you add your front half length, that is from the shoulder to the half length of the front to that of the back. So my front half length is 16 inches and my back half length is 14 inches, right, making it 13 inches. But I'm not going to be using exactly that 13 inches. I'll minus 1.5 inches shoulder slope from the front half length and 1.5 inch shoulder slope from the back half length, making it 3 inches. Okay, we're going to minus 3 inches from the 30 inches. This is because the sleeve is not on the fullest part of our shoulder. As you can see on the inspo, the sleeve is on the slanted part of the shoulder. Hope you guys understand what I'm saying. So we're going to minus 3 inches from that 30 inches and we'll be left with 27 inches. Now that 27 inches, I'm going to add extra 1 inch, making it 28 inches, half inch for joining to the front half length and half inch for joining to the back half length. So our length is going to be 28 inches. So this is me marking the length of 28 inches, and the width where we are going to be pleating, I marked 35 inches. I'll cut the fabric into 2 equal parts, then go over to my ironing table to start pleating. For the first pleat, I will mark 1.5 inches, then from the 1.5 inches I will mark 5 inches, then pin the 5 inches mark to the 1.5 inches mark like this. I will do the same for the second pleat and the rest of the pleats. I'll mark 1.5 inches, then from that 1.5 inches I'll mark 5 inches and pin the 5 inches mark to the 1.5 inches like so. I'll do the same for the other end of the fabric. And please take note that I folded the 2 sides of the fabric. That is the width. After pleating, I'll use very hot iron to press it to hold the pleats in place. I was done pleating. I'm going to be attaching it to the front and back half length. So on the front half length, I will notch the midpoint, and from that midpoint I'm going to mark half inch on both sides. Okay, so this is where my pleat is going to start from, and it will end on the allowance line. Okay, the 1.5 inch allowance we left, that is where it is going to stop. When the pleat gets to that 1.5 inch allowance, I'm going to cut the remaining extra fabric that is left and refold the end. So I'm going to take the other end to the back half length. I'll do the same for the back. So on the back side, I'm going to mark my zip allowance, and from that zip allowance I'm going to mark half inch. Then my pleat is going to start from that half inch, okay, and it will also end on the 1.5 inch allowance. After pinning it on the half length of the front and back, I'll cut the remaining the fabric left and I'll fold it. I will refold the ends. Then after that, I'll go over to my machine now and stitch it down. So I was done stitching and this is what it looks like. You can see how beautiful it came out. So this is me trying to fit it on my apprentice. Okay, so this is how yours should look like. I also did for the second sleeve and this is what it looks like. I really love the outcome. What I'm going to do now is to finish up this dress. So I'm going to attach the skirt part to the half length using half inch. I also attach the back skirt to the half length of the back. So I've gone ahead to open the slit. I marked 20 inches from the full length for my slit, and this is me pinning the skirt half length to the upper part half length. Afterwards, I'll join the two. So I was done with that. What I'm going to do now is to attach my zip and close its 2 sides. So I marked 9 inches downwards from my half length. This is where my zip is going to stop, and I will close the 2 sides. We have closed the sides of the upper part, so I'm going to close the sides of the skirt part using 1.5 inches allowance. And that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful, please like, share and drop a comment. And do not forget to subscribe. It goes a long way to encourage me to drop more tutorials. Thanks for watching and see you guys in my next tutorial.